Welcome everybody. I am super proud to be standing in front of you right here in this theater. I told my husband earlier this year, back when I was like 9 years old, just like Frank, sitting in this, I was probably younger than you were, Frank, though, but sitting here in this auditorium, my dream every time I walked out of this theater was to be right up there on that stage and do something in front of this audience. So, voila, here I am. I am also super proud of the team that brought TEDx to this area. All of the behind-the-scenes work that have gone into doing this is so authentic and organic, and just celebrating all the little things that we take for granted here in rural North Dakota. We should be so proud of the things that you guys do every single day. We match the big cities. We match New York. We can do this. The other thing, though, that I want to confess to you before I start today, because I am using my notes, and the only reason I'm using my notes is because it's Jeremy's fault. Where are you, Jeremy? Jeremy gave us an email. I never read all the details, and there it was. You've got to have a full script. What? No, I can't do a full, so I wrote a full script. And when I write, every word that goes into what I write is very personal and very meaningful. And so once it was down, I don't want to miss a word that I put in. So it's not an outline. I promise it won't be long. But that's why I'm using my notes, because it's just got that extra little touch to it. I'm going to connect you today with food, okay, which we all love and do and have here in our communities. When Jeremy talked to me about this a little bit, I kind of was like, oh yeah, I could do this. But food's not as jazzy as Frank just came in with all that passion and all those pieces that we do. But it's personal, and it connects with you. And through food, I want you to know that you can make a difference in wherever you live and whatever community you are a part of. Be it either the biking community or your community here in Cavalier or wherever you're traveling off to next. So with that, food. For some, that simple word conjures up a cornucopia of different flavors and aromas and associated memories. There's connections and conversations, family and friends, celebrations, gatherings. It's positive, it's warm, it's inviting. But that same word can whisk a person completely off to a different end of the spectrum. It could be rotten and decaying. It could be work, hard work, starvation, illness, bleakness. A lack of food can stifle so much more than human growth in an individual. But there are so many layers to food and its importance to communities. It's a connector, it has benefits, and it provides support. Here in Northeast North Dakota, food or a form of food is abundant anywhere you look. I grew up on a small farm right here. I got myself dirty in the garden through that. We milked cows, we fed the chickens, did the pigs, helped with the harvest. All of those things, there hasn't been a time when food wasn't at the center of my life. Now, I grew up with farming in a variety of varying degrees. It did make a big difference in the grand scheme of things. If you ask my brothers, I certainly didn't do much at all. I have now moved into a more supportive role, marrying a farmer himself, and coming at it from a different aspect. But every day I drive back and forth to work, and there are fields that are around me. There's the yellow canola fields or the sunflower fields, known for their sunflower seeds or their seeds in their oil. But then there's also those waving blades of wheat that are going in the wind, our form of an ocean, the closest we'll get. That wheat gives us our bread flour, or the bushy green soybean fields that are growing for the meals that they're turning into, or the renewable energy that Jim spoke of earlier. And then you have the sugar beets, right, that provide that wonderful sweet product of sugar that are around us. In my job with Extension, I work with foods on a daily basis. I do food education, I do food safety education, I teach families, I teach youth, I teach seniors about how food can benefit their bodies and their lives. And with the 4-H program, we get the opportunity to teach the kids how to bake, how to cook, how to chop, how to serve, how to grill, how not to hurt themselves. Food has a language all its own. It connects people, cultures, families, friends, newcomers to our communities. It's an essential part of every culture, and it's played a fundamental role in this region. Food gives you a way of expressing yourself, connecting with others, and passing on that rich cultural heritage and traditions, and often our shared experiences that we have. Now here in Northeast North Dakota, the Chippewa were here before the settlers that came from Iceland, Germany, and the Scandinavian countries and started arriving back in the mid-1800s to settle this land. They brought a whole different food to the mix. Food back then was essential for sustenance. In those early harsh years, you needed it in order to survive, and it reigned supreme at the center of those family celebrations. It brought people together for weddings, for funerals, for holidays. It unified them. It helped bring the different groups of people to appreciate and understand themselves, things that we still do today over food. Now, the foods at the center of the table might have looked a little bit different. You had lutefisk, oof, and skvid, oof, and spatzel, but the traditions were all binding them together. Now, personally, I enjoy, even though I'm not Icelandic, the vinatarta and then the lefse that's out there, or maybe the krumkaka and the spritzel. Summer and winter celebrations around here still dot today's calendars, and then together we share and we laugh, or maybe we commiserate over the life over traditional foods that have been around for generations, or those foods have been modernized. Take, for example, the Midwest favorite. What is it? The hot dish, right? Hot dishes and casseroles popped up at nondescript potlucks and became reasons to gather once again. Fellowship and camaraderie were had over tuna noodle hot dish. People combined whatever they had left over in their cupboards and stretched their foods. And today, the Midwest is known for that hot dish. It became a tradition all its own. The combinations that you put together, the people that brought together, they blended and they bonded in those relationships. Foods have their own flavors and they start conversations, right? Especially when communities like around here can be very quiet. Food, be it either familiar or unique, loosens its lips. It's safe to talk about a new flavor or an aroma or something you haven't tried. Or maybe it'll trigger a memory for you that you can share. Or there creates a story for another time. But food also brings comfort. One-on-one or within a group, people who are hurting are comforted with food. People gather who are celebrating are brought food. My first baby, I had soups and bread bowls and baby gifts and diapers all coming to the door at the same time. We lose a loved one, what happens? Hot dishes, lasagnas, casseroles, hot dishes all over the place. There's never enough room in the refrigerator for all the people that come to bring food. And do they have to say anything to us? No, because the food says it itself. Food translates into love. Foods also have a way of making their way into a team building or a team bonding type of thing. And I'm not talking the Super Bowl parties or tailgating around here. I am talking that meal, that pregame meal before the big game on that week that happens. This will happen with your Pee-wee teams. It'll happen on the gridiron with football teams, and it'll happen with girls teams as well. There's carb-heavy loads. You meet in whatever big space that you can find, be it a restaurant, a church, a school, whatever can contain all that youth energy. The kids will come, the parents have worked on all that food, they eat and they leave, or some teams will stick around and they bond with each other, right? They'll play board games or they'll watch movies. Or, in the case of my team with volleyball, they leg wrestled in the middle of the kitchen floor, for crying out loud. Whatever it took to know that your teammate truly has your back. Finally, food stirs memories and creates traditions for families. Foods for special occasions, foods for everyday meals, fancy food, simple foods, foods prepared to eat out in the harvest fields, foods to eat on the run, foods in moving cars. Maybe it's a sit down. But youngsters are often taught by their elders how to make those traditional foods. They learn the history, the stories, sometimes the shenanigans, all that came from that food. Generations start connecting with each other. Now, food is essential for our nourishment. It is sustenance, by the way. But there are more benefits to food than just its traditional value. Our local economy, Jim's talked about it right away already, is driven by agriculture. We have 481 farms here in Pembina County, and over 700,000 acres are farmed in big farm production. We're agriculturally diverse. We rank in the top in the state in our potatoes, in our small grains. Some of our dry pulse foods are in there. We also have our oil seeds, and then don't forget about our greenhouses and especially our Christmas trees. Now, you can't eat a Christmas tree, but we celebrate with food around it, right? Large production agriculture drives a lot of the economy when it comes to seed sales, fertilizer sales, equipment sales, but you're also looking at applications. So how do you do ground and air cover but with some of those pieces? You also look at what the family needs to support it between healthcare systems and the families, insurances, and the community of life pieces that we need. But what about the banking and financial service to just hold up the farms? It's all interconnected and why we need it, and a benefit around food. Now, on a smaller scale, the farmers markets are popping up, and they're becoming an essential part of making sure that we have fresh food available, especially in those short summer months when we need it. And it makes a difference in our economies. Our greenhouses, hydroponics are coming into play around here. New technologies for energy, making those fresh food options so much more accessible to everyone. Even agritourism, if you open your mind up to it, is starting to creep in. People are fascinated by where their food comes from, how it's grown, how it develops, and how it's harvested. I keep telling my husband he can sell $200 a seat on that buddy seat in that combine if he's willing to open up and loosen those lips. Tourism in food is another big one. With all the food blogs that are out there and all those foodies, they have made it an entire piece of the economic market these days. There are North Dakota tourism has their own culinary trail that highlights all the different unique, exquisite places to eat in North Dakota, but it also highlights the fun ones, the dives or the drive-ins, or the things that you don't think about so much. There's breweries and wineries and distilleries, all made from our local foods. There's sweet shops and coffee shops and things I hope that you had a chance to visit. But there's also, even right here in our rendezvous region, we're starting to take advantage of that. Where's our local flavors? Who do we celebrate? Where do we look? Who is our favorite food trucks? Where's our favorite restaurants? So that other people can know. Drives us. What about the community feeds that are out there? Anyone attend those anytime lately? They're there for building community spirit, cultural celebrations, but guess what? We use them as fundraisers to fill in those local gaps, for our infrastructure needs that we can't meet, or for an emergency that comes up, or simply because there's a family in need. So you have your fry bread taco fundraisers, you have your burger feeds, you have your Rocky Mountain oysters, you name it, we're eating over it, and we're celebrating it. Young, old, anyone in between, they bring, they eat, and they also benefit because it benefits our local emergency people. It benefits our hospitals. It benefits the things that we need in order to live here in our communities. It's also nourishment, yes, for our body. It gives us the sustenance that we need, and our bodies benefit from the right nutrients so that we can function, move, think, achieve, all the things that we need to do. Every stage from newborn to when we're older, we're being taught how do we eat right so that our bodies can keep functioning. The USDA follows the dietary guidelines using the MyPlate. I teach on this all the time in my work with Extension. We talk about making sure you have fruits and vegetables, making sure that you have your grains. Make half of them whole, please. And don't forget your fresh dairy products and the proteins, the right proteins, those omega fats that are going to make your brain function so that we can think longer and be productive parts of our community when it comes through. And we can live longer and feel better. Gardening. So we're active. Not only is our mind doing something, we're growing the foods ourselves. There's all kinds of different gardens when you look around this community, from the big acre gardens to the community gardens to those smaller raised beds or the tiny little container pots. They all have the same benefits. They help us promote food in the right way. One of the favorite aspects of my job, since gardening has been coming up again, is how to prepare food and how to keep it safe, which also leads to that home preservation piece that's going on, right? Don't follow the internet. Make sure you find a reliable source. You want to keep your food as long as you possibly can, but you want to do it safe. We have ways of teaching you that and promoting that. Everybody wants to get their hands, want to learn how to can or freeze or dry or pickle or ferment. Don't ask me about sauerkraut though, not my expertise. And then also, besides all of that, there's one other way that food plays a big importance in our lives. The other face of food, the one that stings, is the lack of scarcity. Now, a bounty of food surrounds us every day around here. We see it growing outside, but for many it's inaccessible. For them, hunger is real. Food insecurity is an official term used by the USDA. It's for when people don't have enough to eat on a daily basis, or they don't know where their next meal is coming from. Here in the United States, there's over 44 million people that are in hunger or poverty that can't eat. 13 million of them are children. North Dakota, our numbers aren't that big. It's 1 in 18 people and 1 in 3 children. That's still one too many. So according to data from America's feeding map, North Dakota, on a very simple meal, is $3.43 for a meal. I know you would argue with me that day. Very simple meal. Many of us don't take the time out there to notice that face of hunger or that hunger gap. This could be from a child. It might be from your neighbor, or it could be somebody that's elderly, living on a fixed income. Maybe it's somebody who doesn't have reliable transportation anymore. One day, it even could be you, because hunger issues are created from divorce, illnesses, lack of a job, loss of a job. In Pembina County, there are several things that we do to try to alleviate hunger or try to make it a little bit to make it better, but each of these has their own unique sets of challenges every day. The food pantry, which is right next door, is an emergency food pantry. You can get up to 6 baskets a year if you need it. There's no income required. It's just, what's your emergency? And do you live here? We have shelves of canned foods and boxed foods. We have a little bit of space with some freezer foods so that there's some meats that are frozen. A little bit of fresh with the coolers that we have in there. But is it enough? The grocery stores in the area are very helpful in giving us vouchers so the foods can be a little bit fresher and you can stretch it a little bit. 6 times in 1 year. Our hours are limited, 1 day a week for 2 hours, and our freezer and fridge space is minimal. The backpack program for the kids in school, that started up just a few years ago. In the very beginning, there was that need for it. It's a Ziploc bag of things that the kids can do at their own home. You know, put in the microwave, tear off, not super nutritional. The need doubled the next year that we had it. This relies on bulk ordering, donations from anybody kind. It's got no permanent source of funding. And it relies on people like you and I to do it. And it's not available during the summer or the hot meals that they get during the school year. Think about that. Food deserts. We live in a food desert right here. According to the USDA, it's if you don't have a grocery store in your town or you're 30 miles from a grocery store. We have 3 active grocery stores in Pembina County. We have 1,121 square miles in this county. Tons of food deserts. Walsh County nearby piloted a distribution for getting cheaper food in. It's a very creative way. He worked with a bar, they worked with food lockers, and they worked with 3 other little smaller ones to try to reduce the costs. because it's hard to keep those grocery stores open here, because it's easier for those of us that have the means to drive somewhere else where it might be a little cheaper. Others don't have those opportunities. They're restricted. They're restricted by their income. They're restricted by an addiction, and they have that hard choice of making it between what they need or food. Food is usually the one that goes out the window. Maybe others are restricted just simply because they can't drive anymore, or the weather is bad and they can't get to the food pantry when the weather is there, or they can't find a driver. All of these things can be solved with you. All it takes is one person and a bit of creativity and willingness to make a difference in those hungry people's lives. All you have to do is start where you are and ask yourself some questions. The first one, what's already being done? Okay, how can I fill in those gaps? What do they need? Do they need somebody to volunteer? Do they need donations? What do I have that's extra that I can give? How can I build that up? What about what isn't being done that needs to be done? Where are our hot meals coming from? I had a gal walk into our church, living out of her car, passing through, looking for a meal. Sunday afternoon at noon, and I had nothing to give her, no place to turn to her where she could just go and just get a meal without having to ask for anything else. How do we help? What does that look like? Be creative. Think about it. What do I then need to do when I see a need to make that happen and to change that? I want you guys to think about how you fill those gaps. How do you make food available to people who are in an emergency or need help? Maybe they're not even on assistance, but they are hungry. Work at getting others around you involved. Be an advocate. Shine the light on hunger. Help educate communities about the hidden need. It's not just because they don't have enough money sometimes. Raise the overall awareness of why we need health and wellness. Solutions to hunger sprout up every day. They're just like food. They don't need to be expensive or complicated. Could just be a hot dish. They just need to be grown. I challenge you today to look out at the communities that you live in and how can you make food that warm, positive, inviting for everybody there at your community table. Thank you.